I'm Hannah Moore, CFP, a practicing financial planner and educator. I'm on a mission to change the way people think and talk about money. Let's get started. I have had a number of conversations, even in the past month, about this idea of generational wealth. I've had clients bring it to my attention, friends, and even family bring it to my attention. And so I know that there is a lot of talk about what is generational wealth? What does it mean? What does it matter to you, especially if you're in the newer stages of your career or starting a family or, you don't have millions and millions of dollars? What is this idea of generational wealth and how do you build it? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of, for a lot of people, that's the goal. So first of all, why is this such a topic? And I think it's a really, really fascinating topic. There is a general sense that parents want better for the kids than they had. Now, this is not all the time the case, right? And I know if this is one of those things where you feel very strongly about that, it may seem very strange that other people don't see this as the same way. I have clients who come into my office who say, you know what, I want to spend this down to zero. My kids, we gave them good stuff when they're growing up. They're on their own. They shouldn't be planning for this. This money is mine. And totally fine. There's no wrong way to look at this. But there is this general sense, I think majority, I think that's a fair position to say. They want better for their kids. And so this idea of generational wealth comes in. Now, what is generational wealth? This is like a whole Pandora's box that we could dive down deep into this. So let's start out at a high level. When I hear of generational wealth, one of my first thoughts is, what's the opposite, right? What's the opposite of this idea of generational wealth? Well, the opposite of it would be generational poverty. And we know that in our world, that is absolutely a very, very real thing. So when I think about what is generational poverty, it's this constant struggle with money. It's just systemic issues. There's so much. There's just this cycle that people get stuck in, right? And it's, there's a lot of talk about how do we break out of generational poverty and help people, get on a pathway of, we assume it's generational poverty and then generational wealth on the other side of it. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I'd have to think about that a lot more. But one of the things, and certainly there's systemic issues on that, but a lot of generational poverty, there's a lot of research on different mindsets that are and trends within how you think about money, certainly in that space. And so what I would contend, and I don't want to gloss over the systemic issues because I know that they are very, very real. But when I start thinking about generational wealth, I start thinking about mindsets. Like, yes, this is money, right? I will tell you, the people who have asked me about this idea of generational wealth recently come in vastly different socioeconomic situations. There are people who have very little and people who have a lot. And so I think this is something that surpasses the amount of money that you have. It's one of my core beliefs about money, right? Is that we all relate to money in a certain way, and the amount of money that you have just puts a different package on it. But the core issues, the core struggles that you face, somebody who has a lot more money and a lot less money than you are going to have a similar kind of struggle or thought process around this. Okay, so the first question that I always want to ask is, what does generational wealth mean to you? Right? Like, let's map out this dream world and say, what is it that you want to leave your kids? Assuming that it's your kids. And I'm going to get widely different answers on this question. So to give you guys another kind of like concrete example. So college planning. Oh my gosh. I love this topic because there is not consensus on it at all. Even sometimes couples are very, very united on it. And I have other clients who have strong disagreements about how much should they be paying for their kids' college, if anything. I hear people say, I need my kids to make wise financial decisions for themselves, and they shouldn't be relying on me. I have other people say in our world today, like, I need to give my kids every opportunity that they have. The spectrum is so great on this. And I think when I think about this idea of generational wealth, it has a similar spectrum of what does this mean and why is this important? Now, I think at the core of what we want our kids to know, whether, you have a 3-year-old like I do, or you have, grown children, the core of what we're looking at when we think about generational wealth is this idea of what am I passing down to the next generation, right? And so when I think about wealthy clients and wealthy people, right? And my definition of wealth is going to be this kind of this sustained, it's how can you live wealthy now? To me, it's living by your values. It's having this sustained level of wealth that you can maintain, right? That means living within, I would say, how you're grounded in reality of your financial situation. You're aware of how your decisions are impacting your larger financial decisions. And I think a lot of that comes down to a mindset around money. So the first thing that I would challenge, no matter what socioeconomic level you are in, the first thing that I would challenge is what are we teaching our kids about money? Okay, we're talking about wealth. What are we teaching our kids about wealth? One of the questions I love to ask new clients, or clients I have a relationship with, is obviously we're reflecting on what are the money values that you grew up with, what are the money values that you want as a family now, and having this conversation, and oftentimes a conversation will go with what do you hope your kids learn from you. So when I think about generational wealth, I'm going to start there. I don't care how much money you have. I'm going to start there. What are the money lessons? What are the money values that you want to make sure are transferred from you to your kids? Money is the easiest measuring stick, and we can often fall into the trap of, oh, it's all about how much money I leave to my kids. And I would argue that yes, that matters in the equation without a doubt. But it's, what are these core values? How are you teaching these values to your kids? What does that look like? Because that is going to be at the heart of it. Are we giving our kids the tools and the ways to think about money that are going to help them be successful and navigate whatever life throws at them? Because that is the key to me when I think about generational wealth, more so than the dollar amount. Yes, dollars are important. We'll get there, but it's about a mindset. It's about the lessons, the values. How are you communicating that? So be thinking about that. How, I have a 3-year-old, y'all, and I'm thinking about well, how do I teach her? How do I teach her that we don't just go shopping for more stuff, right? That is a generational wealth transfer, right? How am I going to be teaching her how to think about money, even at this young age? What are you going to be opening your kids to? One of my favorite things that I love to suggest to parents, and some of my clients do this, and a lot of clients don't, but showing them your budget, show them where your money is, show them your net worth. I've had clients bring in their 19-year-old son into a financial planning meeting with me, where they are showing their whole financial picture. They're showing all the different projections. They're teaching them a way to think about money. And that's so incredibly powerful when we're talking about this idea of generational wealth. So that's just one thing that I want to stress. That is not a dollar amount. That is, I have clients, like I've said, I have clients who live off their Social Security and are so happy and fulfilled in life, right? There is a lesson in there. There is a financial value that's in there about living within your means with all these core values. So first of all, first thing you can do if you're thinking about generational wealth, or you want to make this part of your legacy, and again, I'm in my mid-30s. This is part of what I'm thinking about too, because this matters of how we're training the next generation. Okay, so the mindset, how are we teaching? What are those conversations to have? Are so critically important. Okay, so let's talk about methods of doing generational wealth. So this is where it really gets down to the question of, okay, generational wealth is important to you. What does that mean? Give me what are examples of where you've seen this in your life? Maybe other families, maybe it's within your own family. Walk me through scenarios. What would you want to happen? What do you want your kids' life to be like? What do you want your grandkids' life to be like? Now, these answers are going to vary so widely. And this is where personal finance is really personal, right? again, the answer, I've seen answers that cross the spectrum on this. Now, I want to take a step back and think about our, here in the United States, like what are the ways that we approach generational wealth and, kind of this contrast to generational poverty, right? What are kind of the opposites? And, I have some friends who focus heavily on this area. And the number one thing, it's home ownership. Like, own your home. That is like the number one thing that they can stress if you're trying to get out of cycles of generational poverty is to do that. And so, depending on what your situation is, again, the spectrum ranges so widely, but I just want to acknowledge that for probably the majority of people in this country, the best way for them to develop generational wealth is to own their own home. And this also puts into perspective when we start thinking about it. If you have more resources, if you are building up, whether you're building a business, you're investing in your 401k, you're starting out in your career, you're doing whatever it is that you're doing to really make sure you have a firm foundation, it helps put those things into perspective for you. Because it's just an important piece of it. Okay, so when we look at generational wealth, again, I've mentioned I had 3 or 4 people bring this up to me. So this looks very different for different families, right? So I've heard people say that the way to build generational wealth is to buy real estate and have rental properties, and that is certainly one avenue to build generational wealth. Another case would be I have other clients who they've just invested their money and they're seeing their money grow and grow. And that's how they're going to be building generational wealth, is that they're going to be passing that money on to their kids and having just kind of that financial aspect to it. I have other clients where they have a business and they want their kids to run it or be part of the family business. And that's how they're going to be building generational wealth. And so those are just a handful of examples. There are so many different ways in which we can do this. There's so many different ways to create money, not create, but really to create money in this country. And how do we pass this on to the next generation? So why it's so important to go through this exercise of thinking about what is it that you want the next generation to have? What do you want your kids to have? What do you want your grandkids to have? Your great-grandkids to have? Kind of thinking through those things. We have a number of clients who are, I would say they're the recipients of generational wealth. And again, it looks so vastly different. We have one client where there was a family. There was definitely, the patriarch several generations ago. But think about this. It gets divided up. It's incredibly difficult. Let me start here. It's incredibly difficult to do generational wealth past one generation or 2 generations. It's incredibly difficult to hit 3 generations of generational wealth, much less even going farther than that. Now, let's think through this, right? So let's say you did build a a business or something. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have $1 million business that's generating $1 million of profit every year. So pretty darn good business. You're definitely in the upper percentages of people in the United States. Well, the first generation, say if you have 4 kids, so each one of them gets $250,000 a year, but then you keep dividing that down every generation. So now those 4 kids have 4 kids. Now you're dividing it between 16 or 20 different people. And then the next generation, you're now dividing it between 75 or 100 different people. It mitigates the wealth as you go through. And that's why it's so important to be thinking about what is it that you want what do you want for the next generation? Do you want it to be where they don't have to work a day in their life? For some people, the answer is yes. For other people, they're like, no, work is good for you. Like they should be able to, do those things. Like they should be able to work. Like I want that for my kids. Other people would say, I want my kids to be able to take a job at a nonprofit or do something that has, more meaning to their life. I don't know what that looks like, but thinking through what do you want for your kids and your grandkids? How do you want that wealth to be transferred to them? Not just the dollars, like the dollars and cents. I mean, we can build plans all day for that, but really thinking through kind of the process of how you go through this is incredibly powerful, and incredibly incredibly important. I mentioned this, money is the easiest measuring stick, but if you want something to stick through with generations, it's going to be, how are you teaching them? What are the lessons that your kids are going to teach to your grandkids that you taught them? Those are the things that really, at the end of the day, are going to make a huge, huge difference. So yes, build generational wealth. All about this, all about doing this, but know that you have the power to pass on generational wealth, even if you're in a tough spot financially right now. You're going to be teaching your kids resiliency. You're going to be teaching your kids that they can do really, really hard things and they can survive really difficult situations. So know that how you're living, how you're relating to your money today is the start. Not even the start. You've already been doing this, but how you're living, how you're relating your money today is a generational wealth that you're passing on, right? Yes, there might be dollar signs elsewhere tied to it, but that is something that's so critical and so important to remember as we're talking about this concept of generational wealth. So know that you are already doing what you need. You are already passing on generational wealth. Be intentional about what that looks like. And if you're looking to figure out the dollars and cents of it, get clear on what you want, right? What is the purpose of this money? What is the outcome that you want, right? If we know the outcome that you want and we know the purpose, figuring out the how, figuring out the method, that's the easy part. But getting really, really clear on how you'd want your kids' lives to be different or the same and figuring out the difference. I've seen a number of clients who that money that they inherit tips them over the edge of being okay in retirement. And perhaps that's what you want. I don't know. That's the most common thing that I've seen. But know that you have the power today, no matter what your situation is, to begin passing on this generational wealth. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everyday Money with Hannah Moore. If you like what you heard, subscribe and check out livewealthynow.com. We have a lot more resources to help you live wealthy now.